With Lauren Laverne, and I'm delighted to say that I'm with Ben Folds and friends here in the Six Music Kitchenette. Welcome, Ben. How are you?
Good.
Thank you very much for making time to see us. There's a big show tonight. You are performing at the Royal Opera House. Quite a venue to get to play. Have you played there before?
Yeah, but it's actually Royal Opera House Oyster Bar. It's a total different. No, I've never played there before. I've done Albert Hall and Shepherd's Bush a lot, Brixton, but I haven't done this before yet.
Beautiful. So, I mean, how are you feeling about it? Is it just another show, or does it feel exciting? And
no, it's exciting.
Yeah.
It's a pretty place.
So,
seeing pictures.
Yeah. So, as I was saying, you've got some friends with you today. Tell us about who you've brought with you and who's on the new record.
This is yMusic. They're from New York City. They just flew in. One of us had an operation. He's doing.
Great. So everyone's raring to go.
We're ready. We're limping in.
Yeah,
it's good.
They just landed. I know a song about that. Yeah. All right, so you're going to do a couple of tracks for us today. Before we hear the first, can you tell us anything about it? Tell us a little bit about the track.
This song's called "Capable of Anything." We try to test out our tempo and count in. Well, I just give them one through four. One of them. In fact, you could do it if you want to.
Oh, I can't have any responsibility for actual music.
All you got to do is just say a number from 1 to 4.
Okay.
And that's it.
Okay.
But wait till we're ready.
Yeah. Everybody gather ourselves. And 2.
Is this? It doesn't make much sense. They sing it like a pop song. You're capable of anything, and I'm sure they meant you could be president, or you could just forgive me. But I stopped caring what you think about me. Of anything, but you don't seem to think that you are capable of anything. My heart in this. You think, oh, holy good God, I want so bad to be, but I was weak and wrong. And when I owned it all, it only made you righteous. Now you got to blame your life on me, but I stopped caring what you think about me. Don't seem to think that you are capable of anything. Capable of anything, but you don't seem to think that you could fly so low or sink so high, that you could ever love again or even try, that you could steal or cheat or kill or lie, but you might.
absolutely joyous.
Thank you.
Also, I feel so powerful. I see why Simon Rattle does it. I feel like I could run mad with the power. Thank you so much. Ben Folds here performing on Six Music. So Ben, tell me a little bit about the new album, So There. It's coming out next month, and it was recorded and arranged with these guys at yMusic. How did you start working together?
Well, I'd made a... did you hear me snort?
No, I barely caught it.
Okay.
Barely caught it, yeah.
All right, I thought I pointed out. Yeah, I started. I'd written a long piece for piano and orchestra, and it's 25 minutes, and that's long for one tune, but needed more for the album. And I thought I'd make an album with lots of different chamber groups, maybe a percussion ensemble, just to fill the record out. And then I heard these guys' new record. I was cool enough to have heard it before it came out, and it's so good. It's one of my favorite records. It's a beautiful record, and I thought, well, I'd like to at least do one or two with them. CJ, trumpet player, and I met and fell in love, and the rest is history. So it ended up being, songs like what you just heard. Like basically, it's an aerobics album, and it's pop songs with, I guess they can't see this over the radio, but you're hearing a cello, viola, violin, clarinet, flute, and trumpet on that tune, and drums, and it's not, there's no bass, this is an electric instrument because it's one of those shitty pianos, but it's not, it's not an electric record.
Well, okay, so excuse us for the language, by the way, Ben. That's have to
That's
say
okay.
for anybody who's offended by that. So tell us about the working experience, because I love the things that I read that you had to say about bringing those two worlds together, and the idea that kind of working with these guys gave you free rein to, as you say, be kind of totally pop in your approach.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I think I need an excuse to write a pop song. There has to be something interesting about it. Otherwise, my mind wanders to other stuff. And the arrangements were enough of their own composition to fill that for me. Because we would sit down. I mean, a few times, the three of us sat down to arrange something. And I think the group then were in within 2 or 3 hours after that. We adjusted it and they just recorded it and they were just done. That makes me happy, and then makes it okay for me to write songs about dancing, and that's mostly what the record's about.
I think there was a beautiful quote I read where you said pop musicians could use the classical world because it's so full of possibility and sounds. It's endless, which I just thought was so poetic and lovely. I mean, do you think that the kind of division between those two types of music is less than it was? Because it's interesting. I mean, I've talked to quite a few musicians about this over the years, and I remember Charles Hazelwood, the conductor, talking about when he first worked with Spiritualized, and him saying to me, that the kind of the alternative musicians were terrified of the classical world, and the classical world, they were kind of, everybody was intimidated by each other, and it was quite hard to get over that. That was a while back, though. Yeah,
well, I think that's what happens when you define, anything. I mean, originally, any kind of music was certainly just music for human beings, and that was at the moment, that was the way to speak, and then it just becomes gilded into something. And I mean, you would find the same thing if I decided to work with a country group or it was jazz or anything. We draw the borders and we think they're important, but it's like, it's like some guys think there's a big difference between hair metal and heavy metal.
The vanity of small differences, right?
Yeah, I can't hear the difference. It all sounds like a bunch of little screaming girls to me. So I have a hard time knowing what the difference is between hair metal and, say, acid rock. But in this case, the difference between rock and roll and classical music wouldn't be that much to someone who didn't understand tonal music. If you were from Mars and you had a different scale or something like that, this would sound like the same thing, probably. Okay. This and Beethoven's Fifth would just be the same thing.
So you, how did the actual writing recording process work? Because as far as I understand it, you worked in 3 different studios, but there was kind of quite a lot of arranging and organising before you actually started to record.
Well, what I really loved about this, more than the idea that it bridges classical and rock music, is that there's with all the choices we have in the way you record these days, you can really just keep going and keep going. But the idea of preparing yourself before you go in to the point that everyone has it on the page, then you capture the right performance, is, to me, a neat thing. I mean, a musician would understand that if you've recorded before. you go in and you can still continue to change and change and change.
Yeah.
And you don't necessarily have to be prepared. In fact, the idea in the 90s was it was kind of cool not to be prepared. But I think there's really something to having every note exactly where you want it. And then it's all about how you feel it, when you go in there because you're prepared. So that's what this did. It was really quick. I mean, they didn't spend any time recording their stuff. Took me forever, my bit, but
but everything else was pretty fast.
Everything else was fast.
It's got quite a kind of, I mean, I know that's not what you're saying, but seems to be quite an old school kind of, you feel like you're going into that big orchestral room at Capitol Records back in the 50s, and everybody's just ready to go, and, you make an album in a week or two.
Oh, yeah. Like the Nat King Cole records, if you listen to those, some of those arrangements have been done and copied in like a day or two, which is amazing.
Stunning.
And they just do it once, a couple microphones, and move on. Mm-hmm. But they're so well prepared when they go in that they can be spontaneous.
Yeah.
And if you're not prepared, then sometimes you can't be. And I liked that approach on this one. And, none of these musicians are all that precious about the way they play. It's just it's pretty ballsy stuff. Can you say balls?
Yeah. Yes, we can. Well, in certain contexts.
Right.
But that's fine. Yeah. I mean, there is a kind of magic to that. It's wonderful. Tell me about the title then. So there.
Well, it was one of the. I almost snorted again. It was one of the songs on the record, which is one of them that we'll play today. And the first thing when you make a album titles, you look through the song titles to see if you can get away with that. And it seems I could, so we were done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, listen, it's wonderful to have you here today. We're going to give you time to retune, and then we'll be back with more great live music from Ben Folds and these guys. It's fantastic to have you here. And, of course, the gig tonight, the Royal Opera House. Very, very excited indeed. Ben Folds and yMusic back with us shortly. Thank you. You're with Lauren Laverne. I'm back in the live room with Ben Folds and yMusic. Thank you very much for sticking with us, guys. So, Ben, on the new record, there's also this 3-part concerto for piano and orchestra, which is it right that it's a new recording of a piece that you wrote last year for a ballet? Am I right?
Yeah, that's right. I was commissioned by a ballet and an orchestra to write a piece.
So, what was the brief?
Make a concerto, And so I did. And I thought about retitling it for the album. Take the word concerto out, so I didn't pick a fight. Because I think if it was just called I don't know, Death Grip or Funeral for an Enemy or something. Like if you called it something, it was a title.
Yeah.
Then I think it'd be maybe better. But I don't know. Anyway, yeah. So that was just me taking a year to learn how to make up a really long song with no words.
I mean, was that the first piece that you'd done that was like that? That was for choreography, and what was that like, and how did that work?
Yeah, well, I knew it was for movement, and so I watched a little bit of ballet to kind of, because I didn't know anything about it. I watched a little bit and recognized that they don't really do things on the nose or on the beat, so I didn't have to make it groovy. Mm-hmm. And I kind of preferred the movement that was done predictable, meters sometimes. So the second movement of the thing is just like every measure's in a different time signature. But yeah, I was, I would just write some, send it to the choreographer, and he would think about it and tell me what he was doing. But I didn't actually see it. I was concentrating on what I was playing, and every once in a while I'd see a leg fly by my face.
So when you're writing, does it always start with the piano for you? Is that where you begin comfortably?
It's kind of the last thing.
Really?
The first thing is always a melody, and either that comes from something I wake up with in the morning, and I like to make as much up of my songs in my head, because there's more possibility in that. That's when you sit down to a piano, especially as limited as I am, my hands fall into predictable places, like Dust in the Wind or Wild Thing or something, and then I just write a song that just you change a couple words from those songs, because being the templates that they are, which is the way the second movement happened. But no, I like to make things up in my head, then find it on the piano, which is why I ended up playing in keys that I'm not comfortable with all the time. B and F sharp minor and stuff. I like C and G personally, but most of my songs aren't. In fact, this record, most of the songs are in F for some reason.
All right.
And so we had a song we made up to teach children about the scale degrees,
right,
and how to cuss on them. And I won't sing it for you.
So I mean,
it's called F'd in the A.
Right. Okay, I see where you're going with that. Very, very smart. I'll definitely have to check that out. And what about the kind of marriage between the words in your songs, the lyrics, and the stories? Is that something that happens along with that melody in your head, like the idea, the narrative idea?
Not usually. Usually, there's like it's like a tension release narrative for me for a song. It's like, this is going to be tension, this is going to be released, kind of binary sort of ones and zeros kind of vibe for me. And then I have to find, what lyrics might make that work. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It could really be about anything as far as I'm concerned at that point. It's where the it's hard to explain, but it really is. It really does come down to, like, I can hear a melody and walk around town thinking about it and get all the things that I would want from it. Chills in the right parts, hear applause. I hear all of it. It seems so real to me. And then when I start finding the words that seem like they work, it ruins it. So then I have to figure out how to keep working with the words until it doesn't ruin it anymore. Okay. Now, one song on the record I had a real plan for, which was called Not a Fan. And that I had a really specific, I almost had it like in a 3-paragraph essay, like, here's where it's going to go. And I accomplished it. But the other ones were a little more... This is little shapeless.
It's fascinating that I was talking to a mate of mine who's a comedian, and he writes his jokes backwards. So he starts with a punchline, and he kind of works back from that to find the feed line.
Great.
And I always think that's an interesting approach. So it seems like there's maybe a little bit of a correlation there. Like, as you say, lyrically, it's not that you're starting with this idea that's this burning thing in your heart, and you need to get out.
You have to. To me, it starts with an impulse, and the impulse, like if I got to write random lyrics and random melodies in the same time period and just throw them together and have them collide, that probably will make some sense, because it's coming. They're just different expressions of the same thing that I'm feeling at the moment. But the thing you have to remember when you're writing is, if you knew what it was going to be when you started, it would be finished to begin with, and that's seems obvious, but you have to go through a lot of mess and a lot of muddy, dark stuff in order to get there. So if you've got a template like this comedian has, where he's going to write backwards, that gives him the license to be in the dark, which is all you need. Like, that's because when you get frustrated, like, I want to be finished. If you were finished, you'd be finished. It's like you have to not know what you're doing.
Have you ever had writer's block then? Because being comfortable, being in the state of not knowing is really difficult.
But I don't think there's any such thing.
Really?
No, I don't think so. I think writer's block, all that means is that fear has basically won. I mean, all a writer's block would be, if it existed, would be not that you can't write, but you can't write anything you like.
Yeah.
You can always poop some words out or some music out, but it doesn't mean that you'll like it. And sometimes it might be really good, but you don't like it. So it's more of writer's block should just be called grumpy. I have grumpy now.
I guess that's why
hate myself.
Everybody says you've got to just write through it. That's the standard advice, I think, is just keep going, keep writing.
Yeah, because it's cliche, but if you're not ready to fail when you make something, if you're not prepared for that, I don't think it can be very good. You got to just go ahead. And that's why some of our favorite artists, sometimes they just suck. Sometimes it's just really bad. If they have good editing sort of skills, or they're patient, or they have people around them, they'll edit it out to where, like, that's a little bit more old school. But now, like, some of my favorites will just make 2 albums a year, and you just really wish you hadn't made one of them, I
mean, can you give me any examples? Not necessarily of people that you wish hadn't made albums, but of, really great songwriters who you look up to, who are your heroes, and maybe, get you through times when you're not really feeling what you're up to.
Well, I can think of, like, kind of 2 classics off the bat. I mean, Ryan Adams started making a lot of records, and they weren't always good. But because what I admire is he's cool with failing. So the stuff that's good is beautiful. It's all there. I mean, it'd be nice if he had an editor in the room, but he's also railing against that era. Yeah. I mean, if you listen to Elton John records, usually a couple of really great songs. And then they were made so quickly, people forget how bad some of them are, and they were so good at making them sound good that it's okay, But I'd say he was like that, and just, like, moved quickly.
Fantastic. Well, listen, it's just wonderful to have you here. We'd love you to play us another song. And I think you said you were going to do the title track for us. Is that right?
Yeah, so there.
Okay, over to you. Ben
All
Folds and yMusic.
We'll count this one off. You did really well last time, actually. That was good. All right. 1, 2, 1, 2. A mattress and a stereo, just like I started, and a note composed with thumbs and phone on unpacked boxes. It's so well written, but I won't be sending it. And I will not forget you. There is nothing to forget. So there. 3 shiny streets and dirty snow, blue skies and deadness. Oh, Brooklyn, it's my second sleep. I damn well did this. The world got big again. You couldn't get rid of it, and I cannot forget you. There is nothing to forget. Oh, so
performing So That, title track of the new album with yMusic. That is out on September the 11th, right?
Yep.
Fantastic. On New West Records, and a couple more shows to come. Obviously, we mentioned already that you're doing the Royal Opera House tonight, and then Glasgow Summer Nights Festival on
Yes.
Friday.
Yep.
What happens after that? Are you heading home or are you doing more shows?
We're heading to New York.
Okay.
Do a couple days of time in the studio.
And so I was going to say, well, there'll be more collaboration between you guys. in the future.
Absolutely.
Obviously, just
I think so. They have to talk, about that.
oh well, this is awkward. Right. Well, in that case, thanks so much for coming, Ben Folds on BBC Six Music. It's a delight to have you here as always.
Thanks.